What up, Cohort 27 Peloton? Mel Tui here, coming at you live from the Tui Family Studios in Los Angeles, California. This is my first ride as a Peloton instructor, so bear with me as I use my notes to guide us through our first 5-minute ride. Progress, not perfection, right? So let's talk about the screen in front of you. Cadence is your leg speed, and resistance is how hard the bike is going. So turn your knob to the right for harder resistance, turn it to the left for lighter, and let's get started and warm up. So resistance 20 to 40, cadence 80 to 100. Are you ready for today's 5-minute reform ride? Our newest series will cover topics in education while we drench ourselves in sweat. As Cody Rigsby would say, when Cohort 27 talks about education, we F it up. On today's ride, I'll be reviewing Cohen and Mehta's Why Reform Sometimes Succeeds. So let's start our climb. Resistance 45 to 55, stay in the saddle. So the authors discuss the conditions for success. Reforms succeed when they solve problems that educators had. They were broadly consistent with the reigning purposes of public education, and implementation did not require deep change in instruction or require extensive capacity building. Even if some conditions were not met, if reform had broad and deep external support, it could succeed. An example of this is the United States' primary, secondary, and tertiary education system. The authors reviewed examples of successful reform, which included state-sponsored primary and secondary education, schools for free people, age grading, standardized testing, and extracurricular activities. Now let's gear up for the uphill battle of unsuccessful reforms. Resistance 60 to 80, cadence 55 to 65, rise up out of the saddle. Some unsuccessful reforms, including reforming curriculum and instruction to reflect child-centered schooling. This failed because the reform complicated teachers' work and teachers were not offered help with implementation. In child-centered schooling, reforms failed because it also lacked strong external pressure to implement. Another failed reform were math standards. In 1989, NCTM published standards, and before this, we didn't have studies on how math was taught, but we did know that it was mainly procedural and mainly teacher-centered. The new standards were not coupled with widely available materials, tools, guidance, school organization, or professional development. So it failed because it lacked any serious support outside of schooling. And it didn't solve any problems for teachers or parents. Woo! Let's flush our legs out. Resistance 25 to 35, cadence 90 to 100. Grab water, grab a towel while we discuss niche reforms. So the authors define niche reforms as novel and specialized and mobilizing resources to sustain the reform. So some examples of successful niche reforms include progressive education that succeeded, but when the leaders left, support weakened. Montessori and Waldorf schools. There are currently over 4,000 private schools in the United States that are Montessori or Waldorf. Progressive education in Montessori and Waldorf schools were created to serve middle and upper class families. Another example of successful niche reforms are AP and IB programs. These addressed how to respond to differences in demand for academic work from students and parents in public schools. All right, let's pick up the resistance again. 40 to 50, cadence 80 to 100, while we talk about the intersection of system-wide and niche reforms. So standards-based reforms include Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind, and other standards-based reforms. They aim to reduce inequality while improving educational quality. These acquired political support, they persist, and all states have key instruments and present them as aligned. Nearly all states are committed to the reforms. Even with these successes, these reforms haven't produced noticeable results in system-wide teaching and learning. Standards-based reforms made two niche reforms possible: comprehensive school reform designs and high-performing charter schools. There are two types of charter schools. The first type focuses on improvement, innovation, family engagement, and academic performance. And the second type focuses on educational opportunity for underserved students. Some examples of the second type include KIPP, Achievement First, Aspire, and they all share a central aim to boost student test scores and actively tie conceptions of quality teaching to academic outcomes. There are criticisms of the second type of charter school, which include pedagogy that values student compliance. There are neo-colonial racial overtones and socializing students to be passive agents rather than critical thinkers. But I was a former KIPP teacher, so I'm proud of the work we did. So shout out to all the KIPPsters out there. Speaking of shout outs, let's look at our leaderboard for milestones. Ooh, Julius, dad of quiz, and Abby with twins for their babies on the way. Cass all in for first gen, and Ryan Chewbacca Smith on scheduling their defenses, and Petra the Husky on surviving life with the foster brother. A dog on a Peloton? Who knew? All right, we're gonna go heavy to talk about the next topic. 65 plus on resistance, cadence 50 to 60. All right, so the authors also talk about coherence and how reform can lead to positive coherence in school structures. And they use the examples of Long Beach, California, and Montgomery County, Maryland, where two districts transformed and used reform to improve student outcomes. So both districts developed student standards and aligned those student standards with teacher standards. The professional development was organized, and principals were trained to be instructional leaders. They hired and promoted from within, and when new programs were piloted, they only went district-wide if there was interest and support from teachers. Skillful leadership allowed them to build coherence by aligning systems, developing infrastructure, and building and sustaining political support. All right, woo! Great job, Cohort 27 Peloton. That was a tough climb. Let's cool down and talk about Common Core and the author's suggestions. Resistance 25 to 35, cadence 90 to 100. So the authors discussed the three dilemmas of Common Core reform. Common Core did little to mobilize mass support, yet its system-wide success is directly tied and dependent on mass support. There's little infrastructure to support the system-wide change in teaching and learning. And the third dilemma is about values. U.S. schools and society have always been at odds and deeply divided about the goals of school. Common Core focuses on instruction that focuses on academic values and outcomes. So, the author's suggestions. Schooling systems and structures need to be aligned. We should encourage niche reforms to operate at a larger scale to serve more students. Create or adapt more intermediary organizations that could support public schools' efforts to improve instruction, and these approaches are not mutually exclusive. We've done it, Cohort 27. We've reformed education. Just kidding, but we're on our way there. Remember to take care of your body by taking a post-ride stretch after this class. And don't hesitate to educate. See y'all later.